super excited. Today is like, well, they're all like something I'm super passionate about. But today's session, when I learned about what we're going to talk about today, I was blown away because there was things that I did not expect at all when I began this process. So today I want to talk to you about that because there's so many things that we blame ourselves for, and we don't even realize that maybe we're not always to blame. So today you're going to get a little bit off the hook with some of the things that we're going to talk about. So before we go any farther, yesterday on day one of Conquer Cravings Challenge, the thing that we were talking about was adding fat, so feeding your brain. So how many of you, raise your hand on your raise hand, lower hand, or just wave or something. Let me know how many of you added fat to your morning today. Raise your hand. I know Becky did. Mavis did. Excellent. Super duper. Okay. So very interesting. Becky and I had a conversation. I hope you guys saw that on the Facebook group. I was so happy, Becky, that you said that. When we are adding fat to our diet, we are not adding fat so that we're avoiding food. No. We're adding fat so that we can separate and feed our brain and give it what it's asking for so that it's going to continue asking for food and not craving things. So when you are using fat, and as you go through different protocols and as you get better at recognizing and learning how to use fat in your body and in your system and in your protocol, you will find that using fat to change your hunger patterns, to change your cravings, to suppress your appetite, these are all tools that you can use fat for. For example, if I'm going on, you ask any one of my clients, they say, oh, we don't know what to do. We're going out for dinner or a work party or a gathering or a potluck. This is, of course, all before COVID, right? Because now we go nowhere. But for those of us who, or maybe you're going outside to a group of 5 and you're all bringing food, whatever the case, when you're going to a place where people are bringing food, they're usually bringing food that is not on your protocol or that you may have decided is not healthy for you. So how do you handle that? Simple. I eat fat before I go, or I put it in a thermos with my fat in there and I drink it. When I get to wherever it is I'm going, I'm not hungry because the fat has satiated me and I don't have cravings, and I can actually look at the delicious yumminess and usually carbohydrate overload that's all over the picnic table. And it makes it so much easier for me to say no, because my brain is not going, oh, you need it, oh, you need it, oh, you need it, oh, you need it. It's just going, and my body is not going, oh, I'm so hungry. Because when we're so hungry, we'll eat anything. At least I will. So don't know about you guys. And when your brain doesn't have fat, it's actually also going to just ask for anything at all, because it needs some nutrition. And it's kind of hoping that you're going to add something it can use. So we're going to talk about a bit about more today. But if you, so Becky, we had this conversation on Facebook. So I'm just going to move to someone else who didn't post today. Did anybody else notice how, hi Debbie, by the way, and I think Cindy's here too. Did anybody else notice how fat in the morning made a difference to their cravings and their hunger throughout the day? I see some people are nodding. Yes, big nods is good. All right, there you go. What about you, Valley? Did you try fat? Oh yeah, you tried coconut oil today. And if you want to answer, go ahead and unmute. What was some of your experience today having fat in the morning?
for me, I know when I eat sugar, I crave sugar. When I eat when I eat the fat, it definitely had satiated that part. Unfortunately, I'm menstruating this week, so then it's just a little bit wacky. So I don't know if I'm a good test subject right now. I'm eating
Well,
anything and everything.
one day, right? And it was one day.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, cool. Anybody else have an experience today with their fat in the morning? All right, that's fine. But remember, this is a participation group, so you need to share. You need to share. Okay, so when you are having fat in the morning or throughout the day, what it's doing is it's not intended to be your whole body's nutrition. It's intended to feed your brain only, and it's going to stop some of those cravings, and it's going to stop that idea that you're hungry. And then today we're going to be talking about how your brain works and how food works and that relationship between food and your brain and the function of your brain to keep you safe. So many of you know what this is like. We talk about habits, we talk about things that we do all the time, and we make patterns in our lives, and our brain loves pattern. Our brain loves to do the same thing over and over and over again. And like this is, I always think this is hilarious, partly because I raised an autistic son and realized that there were some, we had to do things differently at our house than everywhere else just to help him become a little bit more socially appropriate and functioning. So normally in your house, when you sit down for dinner, chances are you sit at the same place you did yesterday and maybe the day before, and you probably have your spot at the table. Even if nobody assigned it to you, you have a spot. And there's also like if you go to, I don't know, like I'm a woman of faith, so I've always been involved in church. So when we go to Bible study, the very first day, everybody sits in a spot. Next week, a whole 7 days later, when they come back, they actually all like gravitate towards the same chair they were in the week before. It's because that feels safe to us. Our brain wants to keep us safe. And remember, God designed us to exist and to live. He didn't design us to self-destruct. So when we are going about our day, there are things that our brain latches onto and says, okay, we need to keep doing this because that went really well. So we're going to keep doing that because that feels safe. And then the problem is now you change things up a little bit and now your brain doesn't feel safe. And what can happen is your brain can throw a temper tantrum. Now, you might not actually understand what I mean about a temper tantrum. I'm going to explain to you what a temper tantrum looks like, and then I'm going to start using different words for it. But if you have, some of you have been through my protocol, some of you have been through other protocols, and depending on what your situation's been, you may have noticed some of these things in your life before. For example, in the protocol that I teach, we do a detox, and we do a complete detox, then we do a rest period for our gut and our brain, and then we reintroduce food in an evaluation system so that everyone ends up finding out what foods are healthy for their body. And I'm against, for the most part, all weighing of food, all measuring of food. What we are looking for is how does food make you feel healthy? So there are things that your brain is not used to. Your brain has gotten information in the past and your brain has said, oh, I need this much food. So if we eat more, our brain is not happy. If we eat less, our brain is not happy. So when you start to go on a calorie reduced diet and you look at your plate and you have a little bit of food, your brain is going to go, oh my goodness, I'm going to starve. This is never going to be enough. And your brain begins to tell you things about how much food there is, even though nutritionally, there's probably enough calories there for you to live for several days. But your brain is going to start to panic. When you start my protocol, if and when you ever do that, and those of you who have know this is what I tell you, I'm like, eat all the fat you can and eat all the beef you can. Just eat, don't stop. And everyone's like, oh, that's amazing. I can eat steak till the cows come home, literally, right? So, so what happens is, especially, I think this is hilarious because every man who's ever joined my program is all like, oh man, we can eat steak. I can do this diet. It's not all rabbit food. And that's hilarious because the next thing I say is, give it a week to 2 weeks and you're going to hate me. You're going to swear at me. Your brain is going to give you a temper tantrum. And you are going to tell me that you are never going to look at meat or eat meat again. And they're like, oh, no. I love steak. Everyone tells me this. And it goes along. Everyone's doing really well and they start feeling amazing and they're losing a couple of pounds. And then boom, because your brain can handle a little bit of change. Your brain can handle, oh, it's cloudy today. We like it sunny, but it's cloudy. But if it's cloudy for 15 days in a row, your brain doesn't like that. And it affects your hormones. It affects everything, right? Same thing with food. You can go on vacation and have different food for a couple of weeks. Then you have different like kinds of food, or you're going to a different place. You're driving a different route. And your brain's not going to like it. When it comes to this particular kind of change where you're detoxing and all I'm asking people to eat is beef, what happens is their brain goes, hang on, it was fun for a day. It was really cool day 2. Day 3 was not bad, but day 4? Okay, well, your brain's going to be patient for day 6, day 7, and then at some point, your brain is going to tell you all kinds of things. You're going to die if you eat that meat. If you don't stop and you don't go eat some carbs right now, you are going to vomit. And if you put that meat in your mouth, you're going to vomit. You're never going to survive. Nobody has survived on this. You are literally, and your brain is going to go crazy. It's going to be completely preoccupied with getting other normal food into your body. And all that is a brain temper tantrum. Because the truth of the matter is, if you have meat on your plate, that's nutrition. That's food. Nobody is going to die of starvation if you're eating meat. It's not going to happen. And so you're not calorie deficit. You're going to be fine. Your mind says this should be fine. But the hormones and the synapses in your brain that are used to going in a certain pattern, that is the part that is throwing a temper tantrum. So it throws this temper tantrum. And when it throws this temper tantrum, it will also begin to make you sick. You're going to think you're going to have a headache. You're going to have stomach aches. You're going to be nauseous. You're going to put food in your mouth and you're going to want to spit it out. And it's going to be completely horrendous. And so this is why and you can ask the girls here who are in my program, the first 6 weeks, we're on 24/7. You have access to me on an app. You can text me at any time because I know what this is like. And your brain is going to go and you're going to text me and you're going to say, I can't do this. And I'm going to say, yes, you can. You can do this. Get up, go for a walk, do it. I'm going to help you and I'm going to walk you through it. Because what happens is when you change something, your brain does not like it. And often that's where, right there, is where we give in because we actually there's a fear building in us that this isn't going to work. But all that fear is your brain saying, I don't like it this way. This isn't what we always did. I once had a boss, a boss I don't work for anymore. I once had a boss and we didn't get along well because I got there and the rules were, well, we can't change that because we've always done it that way and we're not going to make it this way. And this is how your brain is. And so it's you and your brain having an argument about this is how we've always done it. And you have to say, well, I don't care that we've always done it this way. Always doing it this way ended me up where I am today. This is not where I wanted to end up. So if I go back to doing this, I'm going to end up here again. So I need to change things. But when you make those changes, your brain is going to fight you. So often in the past, we all have given in at the first sign of that brain temper tantrum because it feels so real. And it is real because it's going to give you real physiological symptoms. You are really going to be sick. You may even develop a fever. You may shake. You may go through withdrawal. And withdrawal is really your brain saying, listen, you're not giving me something that I have decided I need. And so that is withdrawal. When your brain goes through withdrawal, whether that's from a drug, whether that's from a habit, whether that's from a relationship, when you have been doing something for a long time, your brain is addicted to that pattern. And when you break the pattern, your brain is going to go through withdrawal. And that is not comfortable. When I work with a lot of people, when they go through these times, I remind them food can be and often is an addiction. And this is a strong word that I'm using, but it is an addiction. Now, when I say food, I'm not talking about the nutrient dense food that's actually feeding your body health. I'm talking about food that is empty of nutritional value. And for some, again, I don't teach a particular diet, but I teach people what to eliminate from their diet and then add back nutritious food so that they know which foods are going to add value to their body and which foods are not going to add value to your body. But there are some things that I can tell you for sure. And I'm going to just tell you one today. When we go through, if ever you choose to go through my program, you're going to learn about a bunch of other ones. But the one big one that is like that many people are addicted to is sugar. You've probably heard this, but sugar is in a lot of things. Let me explain what happens when we are eating food that has, sometimes I'm trying to make this real simple and sometimes I forget the words that I want to use. So when God created our body, he created our bodies to know how much to eat. How many of you have ever seen a breastfed baby? You've all seen a breastfed baby, right? You see they go to their mom, they eat, and when they're done, they turn their head away and it's done. And mom does not ever go, oh, I wonder how much milk is left in there. I wonder if they ate enough ounces, because you can't measure it. You just let the baby eat until baby is full and baby turns head away. It's different when you're feeding a baby from a bottle. If you have seen a mom who's fed their baby from a bottle, they'll feed the bottle and there'll be like a half an ounce left and they're going to go, come on, you can do it, you can finish it. And they ignore the babies often, not always, not all moms are like that, but they often ignore the baby's God-given I'm full instinct and push past that. And we've done that to ourselves. We do that to our children. I'm guilty of it. Finish your plate, finish your plate, finish your plate. And there's good reasons to do it sometimes too. So I'm not saying that's a bad practice. I'm just saying maybe we need to be careful about what we're teaching. But that idea of eating past our God-given cutoff point, it starts to mess with our brain, because now our brain is being told, don't listen to yourself, don't pay attention. There are other cues that this person is saying are more important. So we want to make sure that eventually somewhere down the road, and it'll take months and months, that you'll get to that place where your hunger cues do come back. However, before that place happens, let me give you an example of what we do to ourselves. When God designed us, he gave us that cut-off mechanism. But that cut-off mechanism, that biofeedback that happens in our brain and in our body, is for things that bring our body health. So I have a question for you. How many of you have been like so insanely thirsty, you can grab a water bottle and you can down the whole thing? And that happens, right? You've done it, right? Yeah, because your body is like super thirsty. You can down the whole thing. But there's another day that you're not super thirsty. Usually that's the day you're supposed to go for an ultrasound. But you go and you get your bottle that you're supposed to drink, and you get till here and you're like, oh, I can't. And you take a sip, and like every sip is just like forcing it down, because your body's biofeedback says we don't actually need more water right now. As a matter of fact, if I had 12 of these lined up, 12 of them, it's, I don't know what it is now, like 8:15 or something right now. If I had 12 of these lined up and I said, okay, I'm going to drink all 12 before bed, how many of you think I could actually do it? Very unlikely, unless I'm very unhealthy, because we literally cannot put that much water into our body. But what happens if this was 6 iced teas, or 6 pop, or 6 cans of beer, 12 cans of beer? Guess what? It happens all the time, right? Teenagers, adults, they go to a party. This party starts at 8. By the time they get to 10 o'clock, they've put away a 6-pack or a 12-pack. Why? Isn't it liquid? Don't we have this natural feedback to say no to liquid? No, we don't. This is water. Our body knows pure water because we need pure water to live. Add sugar to this water, our body doesn't recognize it. And our body has no mechanism. God did not design a mechanism in our body to tell us when enough is enough. So there is nothing to tell you to stop if you add sugar to this water. Which is why if you can sit down and have a steak. Let's say you have a steak and your steak is, I don't know, let's say typically I eat about a 1.5 pound steak. That's a lot. I don't eat that. That will be probably my meal's worth. But if I sit down at a 1.5 pound steak, I might be able to force myself through it if that's been like I haven't eaten for a while. But normally I can eat a portion of that and I'm full and my body's hungry and I've had fat on it and I'm completely satisfied. And I look at it and go, oh, I can't eat another bite. As a matter of fact, last night, 2 nights ago, I had made myself a really large steak. I think it was about 1.75 pounds. I made myself a steak, sat down, I was starving. I ate a piece like about this big. And I actually said to the people at my table, I'm like, oh, the steak doesn't even taste good. But you know, it wasn't that it didn't taste good. It was that my brain was saying, okay, you're done now. So I put the steak away. The next day, I ate it for breakfast and it was like, man, this is so delicious. Exactly the same steak as I had the night before. As a matter of fact, now it's leftovers and a little bit tougher, but I was hungry and my body needed the nutrients, so it gladly accepted them. And before, the night before, my body was full and it told me I was done. That doesn't happen when you add sugar to the conversation. So maybe none of you are like me, but if you are, maybe you're not, but you know someone like me. I've done this. I have made a double batch of cookies, and unfortunately, before the oven's preheated, I've eaten almost all cookie dough. That's a lot of cookies in raw. I have no problem eating an entire batch of cookies. I can actually take them off the pan, and as they're warm, I can pop them into my mouth and I can eat the whole pan before the next one's baked. And for some reason, I don't get full. I can just keep going. My stomach will feel sick. It'll feel bloated. I'll feel gross, but I just keep cramming it in. And that is not a sign of a healthy brain. That is a sign of an addiction. Because why? Because our body has no biofeedback. God did not design us to say no to sugar. Sugar is one of the things that our brain cannot say no to because there's no information for it. So when we are putting the sugar into our body, what's going to happen is our brain says, oh, that was yummy. Wasn't that delicious? Let's have more. And so sugar acts like a drug in your brain. So someone's asking me here about refined sugar. I am talking about all sugars. Right now, I am not going to be talking about, I'm not talking about sweeteners. That's a whole different conversation. And I am not talking about animal-based sweetener, such as honey, okay? I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about other sugars. So that would be brown sugar, white sugar, molasses, corn syrup, other syrups, maple syrup, like some of those that need processing. And also for myself, I personally would include honey and things like agave syrup, and some of those I would include. But for now, I'm just going to say sugar, and I will let you guys decide what you would want to do with that. Everyone's at a different place. But when I'm talking about sugar, I'm talking about anything that has an OSE. If you look at the original like Latin word for it, it's going to have OSE at the end. So it'd be dextrose, fructose, sucralose is sucrose. Anything that has that OSE at the end is what I'm talking about, if that makes sense from a scientific standpoint. So that's what sugar is. So when you're eating sugar, your brain doesn't know to shut off. It doesn't know that. But it does know your brain is always looking for ways to make things easier. And your brain actually always wants you to be happy, which is crazy. God designed us in a way that when we are happy, it's more peaceful. When we're happy, our stress levels are down. Now, by no means does it mean that God does not want us to experience our sadness. No, that's necessary so that we can actually enjoy the positive, happy, blissful experiences. But our body is designed to move towards a state of happy feeling, or peaceful. I should maybe say peaceful, tranquil. And so what happens is when you give your body sugar, and again, there are other foods there are other substances like this that would affect your brain, but it goes into your brain and your brain goes, whoa, that was amazing. Let's do it again, because that felt good. You get a shot of serotonin. You get a hormone going to your brain that goes, woo, that tasted good. Let's do it again. And so you obey. You're just doing what your brain tells you, and you have more, and you have more, and you have more. And what happens is eventually you can only eat so much sugar, and you kind of hit a maximum level of happy. Okay. Now, scientists have studied this for a long time. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to tell you one of the top Canadian experts in addictions described it this way. She runs one of the largest and only genuine obesity disorder rehabilitation centers in Canada. And her work is phenomenal. She's on the East Coast, but she teaches it this way. And I'm hoping this is going to explain it in a way that makes it easy to understand. They have studied brains. They've hooked up people's brains to machines, to testing things that evaluate, and they also do blood work at all those levels to test where they're at hormone wise and to see the brain function in action. And so they've done it with all kinds of things. They've done it with pain, they've done it with pleasure, they've done it with all kinds of things. I am so glad I was not in the test, because what they decided is that 100 is the peak. That's where a natural, healthy human being reaches maximum pleasure, is at 100. And that is at peak of sexual orgasm. That would be 100. Currently in North America, the average person reaches the point of 100 when they eat white bread. That's a scary thought. When you begin thinking about addictions, that's a scary thought. Now, what happens is we can only eat so much white bread, and now 100 isn't going to cut it. Because if your white bread is going to give you the same amount of mental enjoyment, brain function enjoyment as a sexual orgasm, then you're going to need something else. So you have sugar. Sugar works really well. What they've decided and what they have studied now is that when people are ingesting sugar, it goes to the level of 400. And most people are living at a state of 400 in brain happiness, because they are constantly feeding themselves sugar. And I'm gonna make an addendum here: foods that will turn into sugar for their bodies. When you're at that high sugar level, your brain's at a 400. Now tell me something. Actually, don't tell me. Please don't answer. Please don't answer. But there is a reason why, when you try to come off and you go on a diet and you go sugar-free and you are, trying to just quit cold turkey, there's a reason why your brain is going to go into a huge, huge temper tantrum. You are taking away from it its biggest, easiest, quickest, cheapest drug, even better than sex. There's a dessert that years ago I thought was scandalous. It was called Sex in a Pan. Like, real thing right there. Should be called better than Sex in a Pan, because it brings your head to 400, not to 100. So anyway, that's just a side note. That was just a little extra. That's your bonus for today. So there you go. So anyway, the thing is, what happens is, when we are constantly giving this to our brain, we do not feel like addicts. We don't feel like our brain is in control, because it's a craving. It's just food. We just want to eat it. Everyone else is eating it. It doesn't seem to bother anyone else. And then what happens is we end up with health situations. We end up with weight gain. We end up with bloating. We end up with arthritis, and the list goes on and on. But I want to tell you something else. The other thing that is very prevalent in these people who are, which is most of Canada, most of North America, who are living at that 400 level of like sugar high, also struggle with mental health disorders, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorders, personality disorders, and more of them are diagnosed with some sort of mental health issue, and they are then medicated for that. The problem is, it's not going to actually change anything, because they are still addicted to their drug of choice. Now, I'll be real honest here. I was angry when I learned this, because I felt like I had done a really good job. I was eating gluten-free and sugar-free and dairy-free for a long time, and all that happened was I got fatter and fatter and fatter. I was eating keto and I got fatter, and I was like, this isn't fair, and surely I am not an addict to all of that. And I took offense to that word, because I didn't want to be a food addict. I actually, in my mind at that time, just because I guess I wasn't thinking properly, I was probably an addict, I didn't want to admit that the problem was me. I actually really had hoped that my doctor would tell me that I had like metabolic disorder, and it was like I could be take some medicine and that was why, and I could have an excuse for it. um I'll just, that's honestly how I felt. I wanted it to be someone else's fault. I didn't want it to be my fault. And I certainly didn't want to ever have to say I'm an addict. And but the truth of the matter is I was an addict. When we are giving our brain control over how we are eating and what we are eating, and we are not the ones in control, we are an addict. Whether that is sugar, whether that's fruit, whether that's just too much eating because we are addicted to a certain amount of food, there is a pattern that our brain gets used to, and it demands that because it doesn't want to change. Sugar complicates that because it adds that high. It was so hard for me to get to the point to say, I'm actually a food addict and I will probably always be a food addict, and I need to do something about this. Because if I have friends, I have many friends who have been alcoholics and who have successfully come away from being alcohol. They'll always be alcoholics, but they're no longer addicted to alcohol. But they know they can never go back and have social drinks because they are going to relapse. That is next to impossible when you're a food addict because you have to keep eating. God designed us to need to eat. And so this became a really big struggle for me because everywhere we go, you go to church, you eat. You go to friends, you eat. You go for a road trip, oh, you eat. Like you're always eating. Eating is our culture. And how do you stop? You can't stop eating. But when you add that fat to your brain, and I'm telling you, like you did one day today, I'm going to encourage you, do feed your brain fat as much as you can, and saturated fat if at all possible. You feed your brain fat, and then you need to starve it of the other thing. Now let me talk to you about what happens when you starve your brain of something like sugar. This is right, this part, I'm just going to warn you, this section here is not the good news section. So I'm just warning you, but then I'll tell you the good news at the end. Okay. Okay. So what happens is when you starve yourself of sugar and you say, okay, I'm not going to eat sugar anymore. And I'm going to just tell you, because I counted it and I have to just quickly do a count again. 3. Since in 2021, I have had sugar 3 times. All of the times it wasn't a lot. And all the times I felt so deathly sick that I'm like, I'm never touching sugar again. But I've also been sugar-free for a long time. But when you come off of sugar, your brain is going to be deprived and it's going to go into an adult temper tantrum, and you're going to give it fat. And then it's going to have a temper tantrum and you're going to give it real genuine nutrients. And then it's going to have a temper tantrum and it's going to tell you, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're never going to make it. Look at this, you can't even make it through today. How are you going to do the rest of your life? And your brain's going to go in a temper tantrum. And you have to think of your brain as a 2-year-old having a temper tantrum, and you need to be the adult who's going to say, nope, mommy's in charge. We're not doing this today. No, you cannot pee in the fish bowl. No, you cannot. I raised boys and girls. Don't ask which one that was. But anyway, the thing is, we need to be in charge of our brain, but your brain is going to fight you. Eventually though, your brain's going to go, man, that's so much work. And you have started to create a new normal in your brain. And this new normal, this pathway, it starts to get like easier. and your brain doesn't have to think about it as much because this is what you've been doing now for a while. And so that pathway in your brain is starting to get like a little bit more worn and it's getting easier. So it's easier to say no to the sugar. Now, let's say you go 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, and you're not eating sugar. Let's say you go a year and you've got this pathway down and you feel like $1,000,000, you're doing good, you have no cravings, your inflammation's down, you're thinking straight, your brain fog's gone, and you feel like $1,000,000. And then you decide that, you know what, it's my birthday. I'll tell you my birthday story because whatever. So on my birthday, after 2 years of being completely clean eating, I didn't lick a spoon, I didn't do anything, I didn't lick my finger, I did clean eating for 2 years. On my birthday, I decided, someone was taking me out for dinner. We went to Hermanos and they have this amazing gluten-free chocolate cake. And I'm like, well, at least it's not gluten and we're going to share it. So there was it was a small piece. I think I had 4 bites. I think that's all that was in it because, the more expensive it is, the smaller it is. Yeah. So that's the kind of cake this was. It was delicious. It was amazing. So we cut it in half and we split it. And I had my 4 bites. It was absolutely heavenly. I did also have a glass of wine. Now I had a very dry glass of wine. It wasn't very sweet, but those are the 2 things that I had that day that were off my regular plan. Now I had planned this. This was a planned cheat. And I went home. I was so proud of myself. I was so good. I do have a recovery food. This is all something I teach in my protocol. I ate my recovery food and I did super, super well until the next morning. The next morning, I get up. And while I was making the coffee and getting my butter ready for my coffee, and while I was getting my fatty eggs and bacon ready to eat and to serve my guests, I noticed that there was, oh, look, gluten-free lemon squares on the counter. I should have a bite. And suddenly, I could not stop. I ate the entire pan of lemon squares. The entire pan. Unfortunately, I had company from New York that was here. One of my really close friends and her husband were here. And she made it so that they could take it on the road. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought the girl that lived here had made it. And so I'm like, she can make more. I did not realize that it was my friend from New York. And I just ate her whole road trip snack. Not fun. Anyway, yes, I ate the whole pan. I was mortified because not only now did I have to admit it, I had to go figure something else out for them, but I also felt like my gut was heavy. I was grumpy. I had such a bad attitude and I had a headache. And literally my hands were so swollen. I play piano. I could hardly play piano. It was so bad. And what happened at lunch? I was standing in the fridge looking for what else I could eat. And I went into the cupboard and I was all I wanted to do was take a spoonful of the Nutella. And I was just wanting more and more and more sugar. And so this is exactly what happens when we deprive our brain for a long time. When we then give it back to our brain will never forget the first path it made. It will never forget the first path it made. And that path is very well worn. And depending on how old you are, if you're as old as I am or half as old as I am, that path has been there for a few decades. And that pathway is super strong. They say that if someone is an alcoholic and they stay free, the chance of their next drink killing them is very real, because that drink will be the first of that blood alcohol poisoning that will kill them because they can't stop. Because what happens is it doesn't go to 400. It can pass 1200 in their pleasure levels. By that point, you're dead. This is what happens in our brains because it says, oh, we want you to keep doing this old path that we found. And so it's going to reinforce and increase that pleasure level to keep you going. This is why it's so important for us to recognize ourselves, for me to recognize myself as a food addict. As a food addict, there are some foods I can eat with no repercussions. Avocados, I don't crave them that much. I do crave them sometimes, but not enough that they're going to kill me with the amount of carb content or sugar content they have. I can actually, popcorn used to be my favorite food. I can actually have a bowl of popcorn and leave it alone. I can. As a matter of fact, I can almost not finish them anymore because it doesn't make me feel good. It does not do to my brain. And I used to be, like, I never used to be a sugary person. I used to always be a salty snack. If there was an option, I would take French fries or potato chips or popcorn. I would never choose a sweet. Now, what I know about myself is that if I slip up on the sweet, my brain is going to go way gung-ho and I may never return. So I have to be super careful on that. I do plan it. And I do have recovery methods, which I teach in my program, because we live real life. And sometimes we're going to have sugar by accident. That happened to me last week. Someone made food for me that was sugar-free, but it actually had sugar in the barbecue sauce. And I don't do barbecue sauce and I don't do sugar. So, it was an accident, but I still had to recover from that. I have to admit that I am a food addict and I need to control what I put into my mouth so that my brain is not going to run me, control me, and that I can make good decisions. When our brain is in control, we're not going to make good decisions. And so how do we do that? Number one, give it fat. Give it fat. The more fat you can give it, the less hungry you'll be, the less craving you'll have, and then the more ability you're going to have to say no long before you've taken your first bite. Second thing is plan. Plan. So again, there are people here that some of you are in one of my groups, and one of the things that I teach. So this is going to be a repeat if anyone ever joins my group. But if you're ever in one of my groups, you're going to know that I teach that there is a very specific way to cheat, basically. And the way we do that is to cheat. But we don't know what cheating is when it comes to food. So I'm going to get you to unmute your mics, and I want you to tell me, what does it mean to cheat, period, whether that's in life or in food? Tell me about cheating. What is it?
It's dishonest.
It's dishonest. Okay, it is dishonest. Okay, good. I think I know what you mean, but do you want to elaborate a little bit?
You should be doing this, but you're doing this.
Oh, okay. So you're disobeying.
Maybe that's a better word.
Disobeying. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Jen, I saw you unmuted. What's your thoughts on cheating?
Well, the first thing I thought of was like, it's wrong. It's wrong to cheat, right? Especially from a teacher's perspective. You don't cheat on your tests or anything else. You just don't.
So tell me about cheating on tests. Why do people cheat on tests?
Because they think it's to their advantage. They think that they will get a better mark if they're not caught, right?
They're not caught, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have an idea of what cheating is or why people cheat? Debbie, you have an idea?
Rewarding.
It's rewarding? Yeah.
Rewarding.
Give me an example.
You can win.
You can win. Exactly. You can win at a game. You can win in your taxes.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. So that's what cheating is. Cheating we do so that we are, when we cheat, we're being disobedient, but we cheat so that we can have an advantage. We cheat so that we can win, and we cheat so that we can get ahead. Now I want to ask you something. When you are faced with that absolutely delightful turtle chocolate pecan caramel cheesecake, how is cheating on that to your advantage, to your benefit, to your win?
Well, it brings up your pleasure center.
It
That
raises
gives
your
you-
pleasure center.
Yeah, it gives you that high.
It gives you the high. Are there any other benefits?
Mm.
Nope, there's not. As a matter of fact, if your plan is to stay healthy and to stay uninflamed, if that's your goal, if your obedience, if you want to be obedient to your plan and your goal of staying unaddicted or to stay uninflamed and to stay healthy and to keep your sugars in balance, then that is not to your benefit at all. So we call it cheating. And I want to tell you something, that's lying to yourself. That's not cheating. That is not benefiting you in any way, shape, or form. What it's doing is it's reactivating an addiction. That's not a cheat. That, if you just walk in and you sit down and you have a plate of that turtle chocolate caramel pecan yummy cheesecake, that was self-sabotage. Yep, that's a big bad word. That's self-sabotage. I'll tell you what a cheat is. I'll tell you what a cheat is. Because in Jen's class, when someone's cheating, they think about it ahead of time. And they sit beside the smart kid and they know exactly where to look. Or they ask the class ahead for the key, or they ask the people from last year for the answers, and they figure out, they work ahead. You don't accidentally cheat. Neither do you accidentally cheat on your taxes. Nope, you've got to plan this. Actually, you've probably planned it all year. Oh, I'm going to give money here and I'm going to get a receipt from there and I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that and I'm going to do this and I'm going to claim that. And you've been planning it for a long time. I won't go to cheating on your spouse, but you also don't accidentally cheat on your spouse and wake up in someone else's bed and go, huh? Who are you? That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It does on your plate. You could go, what? How did you get here? That's called self-sabotage. If you're waking up in someone else's bed, that's self-sabotage, just saying. But cheating is planning. You plan it. You plan a cheat. So you need to be honest with yourself. If there is a birthday coming, if there's a wedding coming, and there's going to be food that you know is going to be a temptation, you need to plan the cheat. So you plan, you eat your fat. You plan, you make sure that you go there when you are not hungry. You plan, you bring food with you so that you have something to eat while everyone else is eating other things. All those things come into place, and then you can say, but I will allow myself whatever it is that you plan, whatever that is, even if it includes sugar. And you say, okay, I'm going to have a little piece of this cake. And then you plan your recovery. You plan how to come back from that. You plan how you get back into your regular scheduled routine of fat and healthy nutrient dense food. Why? Because your brain knows when you are in control of your brain and you tell your brain, We are not going to keep going in that direction. We are going to do this, and then we're going to come right back here. And you plan your next day or two of healthy, nutrient dense food. Your brain's just going to obey because you have been practicing putting it in that new line of thinking. And that is so important, so important. On Saturday, I am so excited for you to meet four of my clients who will be sharing some of their experience about what this has actually done for them and what their experience is in working for me. I'm so excited for you to meet them all. But the thing is, this piece right here of being in control of your brain and planning your food and choosing how to approach food from a proactive perspective, eating fat, planning, thinking through it all, and being in charge of your brain and giving your food and your body nutrient dense food rather than food that your body does not recognize, like sugar, for an example, you are going to have so much more control over your cravings and your emotional eating. Now, we haven't talked about emotional eating yet. And I know some of you are saying, well, come on, I thought this was about emotional eating. This is about emotional eating. But if your brain is not satisfied, when you get those emotions, your brain is not going to have the strength to help you deal with the emotions. If you are in a state of addiction and your body is not ready, or it's in the throes of withdrawal and you have emotions, it's not going to be able to handle the emotions. It can only medicate the emotions. So these are the steps that you need to go through so that you can deal with the emotional eating part of it. Does that kind of make sense? All right. So what I want to give you freedom from is the rat race and beating yourself up for saying, oh, I try this and I fall off the wagon. I can stay on a diet for 10 days and then I have to have a whatever. You know what? Yeah, that happens. Part of that is your brain needs more nutrition. Second part is there's an addiction that needs to be broken. And it's not all about you can't do it. It's not about willpower at this point. It's about taking control of your brain and your body. And I just want to say, it's not all your fault. Some of it is your brain. Some of it is the physiological parts that are happening because of the food that we've been eating. But when we don't know, we don't know. I mean, honestly, Mavis and I, we share grandchildren, and it drives me crazy because I actually have candy in my purse. I have candy in my purse because when I walk in the door, Cece, I need candy. And it's like, what? The thing is, my children feed their children sugar. Me not feeding them sugar at this point is not, if anything, is going to put them into withdrawal. And I do not want a 2-year-old potty training in withdrawal. Let me tell you, that's not fun. So right now, if you go pee-pee on the potty or you go poop, you might get 2 candies. So there you go. So right now, but yet I have to be honest, because I know what sugar does to their little bodies and to their brains, I actually feel like I'm being like a really mean grandma. So there you go. There's my guilt. There's my confession, because I know that this could be a lifelong struggle for them. And I don't want to be responsible for that. However, my mom did the absolute best that she could for me. She did the absolute best with what she knew. And I still ended up here. There are so many factors that are involved with this, including trauma, which is a brain thing and a gut thing. There's so many pieces involved. The kinds of foods we eat, where we learn to eat. For me, there was a whole bunch of years of disordered eating, not eating enough. I was eating way too few calories. I was in that anorexic era and really had to deal with the problem of eating. And and that's why I never recommend weighing or measuring your food, because we need to actually get back to living the way God designed. And that is, He created our bodies to learn and have the mechanisms to tell us when enough is enough. So let me open it up to questions. I could go on this topic literally forever, which is why a year-long program is never too long. So open up your mics. I would love to see questions. I'm going to open the chat here. No, peanut butter does not count as saturated fat, unfortunately, because it is not an animal product. And there's actually another danger to peanut butter, even if it's the peanut butter that has, and I'll tell you why peanut butter is not saturated fat, but saturated fat, remember, has to harden. So when peanuts separate, when you have an all natural peanut butter, especially if it just has like just peanuts or peanuts and salt, which would be the healthiest form of peanut butter, you'll notice that it separates and the oil comes to the top and it's never hard. That means it is not a saturated fat. So it really does need to be an animal fat. The only hardening fat that would be considered reasonable at this point would be that hardening coconut oil. That would be what I would suggest. Does that make sense, Valley? Okay. There's other issues that come up with peanut butter when it comes to things like oxalates, which we are not even going to talk about at all in this program. But peanut butter is a high fat. It is high fat, but it has a lot of damaging particles in it that can actually make the process worse. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have more questions, I can answer. Yeah. So unmute yourself, ask me questions. That's what the next few minutes are. I'd love to hear from you.
You talked about steps, and you said give fat to your brain and plan. Were those the two steps that you were giving, or are those the only two steps, or is that just a smidgen for today?
That's all we can cover today. So yes, definitely. Well, and then, okay. So yes, feed your brain fat and then plan. Now in that planning would include which foods you need to take away. Yeah. So for me, early on in my life, taking sugar away would have been the thing to do. Right now, or when I started this food protocol, taking sugar away wasn't the thing because I wasn't eating sugar. So for me at that point, it was taking away other foods that I was still addicted to emotionally and in pattern. So that was that food addiction there. So that's going to be different for each person. And I'm not saying that you need to necessarily take them all away cold turkey, but at least to become aware of the addictive patterns that you have surrounding those foods. And then figuring out if taking that away. Many people find themselves addicted to coffee. Many of people find themselves addicted to, and this is what we're going to talk a little bit more tomorrow, but to the method of the food or the presentation of the food or things like that. We're going to talk about that some more tomorrow. But whatever that addiction, that food addiction is, and if you find yourself going, yeah, that's not it, I'm not giving that up, that's probably the one. If you're feeling like really protective over it.
Fair enough. I have one other question.
Yeah.
It was a little bit from last night, because I said in the mornings, like I'm just not hungry and I don't eat till like 2 o'clock, and you said that's problematic. What about fasting? Do you not take that into account, or should we not be fasting, or like there's intermittent fasting, right? I've tried it all too, and I have had success. I've lost and gained more than I'd like to admit, but I want something that sticks, and so
right. I will. In the program that I teach, we go through a whole lot of information about fasting. I can't cover that all in a few minutes here, but myself, I would say anyone like myself who might be a food addict or who might have disordered eating, I don't think fasting is ever wise. The reason is it does more emotional damage than it does physical benefit to your health. The reason is we are a people group that likes to punish ourselves. So if you overeat, it's easy just to fast and beat yourself up with fasting. And it's also a way for us to excuse and justify bad eating. And the other thing is our bodies are made to need nutrients, and our bodies are made to sleep at night, and that would be a natural set of fasting hours for 12 hours. That's a natural fast. So what should be happening is your food throughout the day should be used to give you energy. And then at night, your stomach should be getting to the empty point and then resting. When you start adding fasting to your day-to-day living, what you're doing is you're increasing your cortisol, you're increasing your adrenal requirements, because you are requiring more and putting more stress on your body. As soon as you do that to your body, you're actually affecting your emotional ability to handle that stress. It can affect your sleep, and it can become an emotional, your fasting can become an inappropriate emotional bandage to use for an addiction. Does that make sense?
Yes, so 12 hours is a natural fast.
12 hours would be a natural fast. Like if you eat dinner like at 6 o'clock and you have breakfast at 7, that's a natural 12-hour fast, right? Now, hopefully you're sleeping a lot of that, right? And you're getting really good rest.
Yeah.
The more rest you have, the more ability that you have to plan, the more ability you have to think properly about your food and make really good choices. So yeah, does fasting have benefits? Absolutely, fasting has benefits, but in a very planned and strategic way, which if I had more time, and like I do in my program, I teach about that. So there are definitely benefits, but I don't think intermittent fasting for most people, especially within the first year of attempting to break a food addiction or to get emotional eating under control, I don't think intermittent fasting in the first year is appropriate. My personal opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, next question. Becky, any questions from you? Mavis? Do you have a question, Becky?
Do you ever portion control?
Do I ever report? You don't have to. If you're eating in the way that I was just describing, you don't need to. Because if you're eating food that your body is going to recognize as food, it will tell you when to stop. I don't believe, you're asking me a really big question here. I don't believe in portion control. I do believe in portion control when your body is dictating it. But I don't believe in portion control when your brain is dictating it or a diet is dictating it. And the reason is your requirements and your needs from day to day are going to change. Mm-hmm. So if you are going to be like busy one day, you're out working in the garden and you're doing all this crazy stuff and you're shoveling the driveway. Well, if you're working in the garden, you're probably not shoveling the driveway, but whatever. If you live in a mixed climate place, I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like you're a busy day, you know, you're doing lots of physical labor, and the diet that you're on says, oh, you're only allowed 1,200 calories. What's going to happen is you're going to get so stupid hungry that you're going to binge because you're dying of hunger. Your brain is going to be demanding food. It's really demanding fat, but you're committed. You certainly can't add fat to a portion controlled, calorie restricted diet because fat has your biggest amount of calories. So it's so you're going to sabotage. Then what happens is then there's another day that it's raining and everything's muddy. You can't do a blinking thing. And you've got 3 sick kids and you're laying on the couch with them for 9 hours of the day. You don't need the 1,200 calories. You need to respond to your body.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't believe in portion control. I believe in allowing a healthy body to determine what you need to eat. Now, having said that, many of us have damaged our brains and our metabolism with portion control in the past. And what that means is, like I said before, we've been told we need to finish our plate. So we eat a plate full of food at breakfast and a plate full at lunch and a plate full at supper, and we eat 3 square meals a day. And our body is used to that amount of food. So when we reduce the amount of food, our bodies are going to get hungry, but they're not actually hungry. They're just like, oh, this wasn't normal. It's changed and I don't like change. So I'm going to throw a temper tantrum. So we don't want to go there because that's that temper tantrum piece I talked about earlier today. But then the second part of this is when we are coming into a place where we're starting to recognize the messages and like our hormones have to get healthy first, because your hunger pangs is actually a hormone called ghrelin. And so if you don't have that hormone ghrelin ever showing up, you're not going to know that you're hungry. But let me tell you, if your hormones are screwed up, you're not going to get that hormone working. So there's actually a process that you have to go through to get to the place where your body is actually hungry. And again, that takes months. I would say there's really normally not before 9 months in my program is anyone ready or even close to learning the process of using their hormone balance to determine whether or not they are actually hungry and intuitive. So we have different ways to measure it until that point. But your hormones have to be working for that to work. So, and believe it or not, at the beginning of the program, what I am actually trying to get you to do is eat more food than you've ever eaten in your life. And you will be shocked that you can eat like 2 pounds of meat or 3 pounds of meat a day and lose weight, plus a bunch of fat. And you'll reduce your inflammation and your gut will empty. And it's just going to be, it's amazing, because as soon as you give your body nutrients, it knows what to do with them. God designed us very, very well that way. So to me, calorie restriction and portion control is not for this stage of the game, if that makes sense.
How do you know if your hormones are working right?
Couple of things. Do you sleep? Does your head hit the pillow and you fall asleep and stay asleep at night?
I stay asleep at night. I don't always fall asleep right away.
Okay. And about how many hours do you sleep at night?
6 to 7.
You're all waving at me. Hang on. Is there something in the
Sorry,
chat?
wait, Jen just left. We were waving goodbye to her.
Oh, okay. All of a sudden, all the people in front of me are all waving. I'm like, okay, what's happening? Okay, sorry. Okay, so you sleep, sorry, how many hours at night?
About 6 to 7.
Okay. And do you feel tired in the middle of the afternoon?
Yes, I feel tired all the time, but
Okay.
it doesn't, I don't know if it's my hormones
Yeah,
or
it
if
is
it's,
hormones.
if
It
it's
is
the
your hormones.
radiation we just finished, right?
Yeah, that would definitely be your hormones. There's lots of different kinds of hormones. So I would want to ask you about your about your skin. I would want to ask you about your bowels. I'd want to ask you about other symptoms that you have, because hormones play every role in our body. And we often think it's only our sex hormones, like our estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, our thyroid maybe. But you have so many hormones in your body that in order to actually understand, and if you adjust one, the others all adjust. So getting into a place where your body is moving all your hormones into a healthy direction, they will all move in a healthy direction. You can't
Because for
change
me,
one.
it feels like I'm trying to get out of this roller coaster,
Yeah.
and I've asked my doctor to check my hormones to see where I can start, and he says, "Oh, they're all normal,"
Yeah.
and it's like that's not possible.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So the problem with the lab work that you get done is that the doctors are given a range. So let's say, like I was telling you, 2.0, 2.0 is normal. Anything less than that is normal for your thyroid. But if it's like higher, like let's say up to 6, now it's not healthy. But if you're at, let me see here, 2.1, they're going to go, oh, you know what? That's close enough to 2. You're fine. But
2.5, I think they were.
2.5, yeah. And 2.5 is actually not okay. Like, because this is a very broad range of normal. That's a huge range of normal. And that's not okay. Now, if yours is off by 2.5 on your thyroid, and you think about everything your thyroid does, and it's off, okay, think about a circle, right? So yes, you can come here and make a direct right turn, but if you just make a 1 degree different, like 0.1 degree different, and you take that out, you're going to end up in a completely different place because, and that's a tiny, tiny difference. 0.5, when you're off 0.5 in your hormones, and he's going to tell you you're borderline or you're normal.
Yeah.
But it's not, because actually it needs to be under 2 to be normal. So if your thyroid is off, I can guarantee you have other hormones off. And there are hormones that they don't even test in our Canadian doctor system, in our Canadian medical system. Yeah. So, and different health situations that you've been through, medications, treatments, things like that, like birth control, antibiotics, various different kinds of chemical treatments that people go through, all of those mess with your hormones. And they mess with your gut's ability to communicate. This is the bigger topic of that I don't have time to get into, but it impedes your ability to communicate. Your gut and your brain communicate. And so when your gut has any damage, it's not going to be communicating the right stuff to your brain. And so medication can do that. Trauma can do that. Eating disorders, which is where like so much of my issue would have come from, trauma and eating disorders for myself. And so getting that healthy so that you can get your hormones back in balance is super important. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Debbie, do you have a question for me?
I do. There's
Excellent.
no vegetarian or vegan version of this, is there?
No, there's not. You're asking a good question, and there's a long answer to that, and then there's a short answer to that. The long answer to that, I don't have time for today. The short answer to that is your body needs fat, and vegetables, plant food rarely has the kind of fat that you would need to bring the right kind of cholesterol to your brain. So that's the first problem. And now typically people are going to say, oh, but there's lots of benefit in, for example, nut oils or like olive oils, avocado oil, things like that. There are flaxseed oil. The problem is when we get into those kinds of oils, they are not the right kind of oil that is going to be assimilated by your brain in a way that it's going to recognize. That's number one. The second thing is, I'm not sure if you are familiar with oxalates, but all of those oils all of those foods are going to contain various levels of oxalate. and they are going to make a demand on your body for more cholesterol, which means that if you're not giving your body cholesterol, your body is going to have to create it. And the problem when your body creates that is it's actually going to be the problematic cholesterol, and you can end up with significant health damage. I could go into more detail if you would like more information on that, but that would be the summary. So feel free to ask more.
I'll wait, but yes, no, that's an interesting thing. I'll do some research and I'll come back and ask more questions. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have lots of people who ask me that question. But another just little piece about that, I don't want to keep you guys too late. I don't even know what time it is. But if you have time, I'll give you I'll just give you one example of why and how that cholesterol, oxalate, and plant product works in your body. So every plant-based food has some level of oxalate. Some is going to be minuscule and some is going to be astronomical. An oxalate is a very tiny glass-like microparticle that is extremely sharp and does damage to us inside. Our bodies, if you have a completely healthy body, no gut issues, and your body, all of your mucous membranes are intact, you've never had medication, you've never had emulsifiers in your food, which is a peanut butter issue actually. If you've never had any of those and your body is completely intact, the oxalates should, in theory, just be eliminated. And that should be a healthy thing for you. However, most of us don't. Oh, who did I lose? Most of us don't have that perfect body to eliminate all the oxalates. So what happens is our bodies gather and store. They are fine enough to go through the gut lining, and they go straight into the bloodstream, and they can go into your head, they go into any part of your body. So if you've ever had a kidney stone, chances are it was calcium oxalate, which is an oxalate, it gathers in your kidney, and then your kidneys wrap it in calcium so it stops doing damage in your kidneys. That's how you end up with a kidney stone, gallstone. Some people will say that with arthritis, they get like crystals in their joints. Those are oxalates. But one of the issues, for example, we could talk about your gallbladder, we could talk about your pancreas, we could talk about all kinds of organs, but let's talk about your blood. When you have oxalates in your bloodstream, for example, that really tiny oxalate can do a great deal of damage. If you think about the capillaries in your eyes, for example, that size of blood vessel, they're minute, and yet you have this glassy, sharp microparticle that's floating through there, and your body wants to protect you. God designed us that he wants us to live. He wants us to survive. So what is your body going to do? Your body is going to send two things. It's going to send calcium and it's going to send cholesterol. The cholesterol is going to wrap that oxalate so that it becomes soft, so it doesn't do damage, and it can't cut the membranes around it. And then it's going to also line your arteries with calcium to protect the walls of your veins from the friction of the damaging particles. So what happens is now your body is creating cholesterol so that it can wrap. And what happens is cholesterol, that kind of cholesterol is called sticky cholesterol. It's a bad cholesterol. It's sticky. It serves a purpose. It's protecting you, but it's also very sticky to calcium. And that's where you end up with cholesterol in the blood veins and high cholesterol levels that are now actually dangerous. If you're not eating that, you will actually eventually dump the oxalates. If you have a low oxalate diet, you'll eventually dump the oxalates, which can be very difficult and painful, but you'll dump them. And now your body will begin to as well start to shed the calcium from the walls of your blood vessels, your arterial system. And then your cholesterol is good. Even what we would normally consider your bad cholesterol, it won't have anything to stick to. It will just be completely free flowing because it's not wrapping on anything. So that's just one example of why, like, I recommend limiting high oxalate foods. You can look up like the Kidney Foundation. They have a lot. You can also look up the vulva disorder association, I think, or vulva pain disorder. Anyway, there's lots of parts of the body that struggle, and there's whole organizations around that give information on why to not eat oxalates for that particular reason. So yeah, look it up. The information's out there. I just try and make it simple and easy and lay terms for more people to understand.
Thank you. I'm going to be reading all about this tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sally K. Norton. I would say she's probably the world leading expert on oxalates. And that's just one of the issues, but that's the one I talked about today. So that's the one I brought up for you. But Sally K. Norton. And yeah, again, Kidney Foundation, different places like that.
Super. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome, Debbie. Valerie, do you have any questions for me? Maybe she's not there. Okay, thanks, Valerie. I appreciate that. Pam, what about you? Any more questions before we wrap up for tonight?
I think I got everything. Lots to process, so I may have more tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fine. And that's what the Facebook group is for, right? So put your questions in the Facebook group. I might not have time to answer everything, right? Like there's so much information and so much studying I've done that I want to make sure I'm giving you the most important pieces to make sort of next step decisions for yourself. But yeah. Good. Well, we're going to wrap up. We've made it a long time. We've done an hour and a half today. I know that I promised you guys it would be 60 to 80 minutes. So we've gone almost 90. Thank you for your patience. And yeah, post in the Facebook group. I'd love to hear what your takeaways from today were. And I enjoyed seeing you guys.
Oh, thank you. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. See you
Excellent.
guys all tomorrow. Bye, Pam.
All right.
Hi, Debbie. I can't say nice to see you, but nice to hear you.
Maybe tomorrow I'll have some bandwidth.
Yay.
There you go. That's
Great.
okay. That's how I was yesterday. Thanks, Carla Ann. It was great.
All right. See you guys.